Hi, everyone. Welcome to the MedCloudInsider podcast, a monthly recap of the top stories published in our online industry news magazine for IT professionals and developers in the medical and healthcare community in the U.S. It's based on the work of our flesh and blood reporters and given voice by AI. I'm Gladys Rama, editorial director in the Converge 360 group of 1105 Media. And I'm joined today, as always, by our editor-in-chief, John K. Waters. Hi, John.
Hey, Gladys, great to be here. We've got a fascinating topic lined up today.
We sure do. OpenAI just dropped something big in the healthcare space, and I'm curious to get your take on it.
I assume you're talking about OpenAI's big move into the healthcare sector.
Exactly. For our listeners who might not have caught the news, OpenAI has unveiled what they're calling Health Bench, essentially a massive benchmark designed to test how well AI actually performs in healthcare settings.
Since ChatGPT launched, there's been this, let's call it optimistic thinking, that AI could revolutionize everything from writing your emails to diagnosing medical conditions. But healthcare isn't like other industries. There's that saying, move fast and break things, which works great for social media apps, but not so much when people's lives are on the line.
That's a key point. AI has had these significant blind spots when it comes to medicine, and the stakes are just so much higher. So, what makes HealthBench different from other AI testing systems we've seen before?
Well, it's not just testing whether AI knows medical facts. It's testing if AI can actually function in realistic healthcare scenarios. Can it communicate properly with patients? Can it recognize emergencies? Does it know when to defer to human judgment?
Which feels like a huge step forward in addressing those blind spots. I mean, passing a multiple choice medical exam is one thing, but navigating a real conversation with someone who's sick or scared, that's a whole different challenge. So, what is it exactly that makes healthcare such a uniquely difficult challenge for AI companies?
Great question. I think it comes down to this. In most tech industries, there's room for error. If your music app recommends a song you don't like, no big deal. But in medicine, a small mistake could literally be life or death.
Right, Silicon Valley has this whole iterate quickly, fix bugs later mentality that just doesn't fly in healthcare.
Exactly. When OpenAI launched ChatGPT, people were amazed by how it could write essays or code. But the moment someone asked it about their chest pain symptoms, things got complicated. Fast.
And that's because medicine has this incredibly high standard. It's not just about having the right answer most of the time, it's about having the right answer nearly all the time. And maybe more importantly, knowing when you don't have the right answer.
That's such a crucial point. In healthcare, good enough simply isn't good enough. And there's this whole other layer of complexity. Because medicine isn't just about facts and figures, it's about context, intuition, and human judgment.
I've heard doctors talk about that gut feeling they get sometimes when something just doesn't seem right with a patient, even though the tests look normal.
Exactly. And how do you train an AI to have that kind of intuition or to understand cultural nuances that might affect how a patient describes their symptoms?
Or even to recognize when a patient is hiding something because they're embarrassed or scared.
It's these human elements that make healthcare such a challenge for AI, and why OpenAI creating Health Bench is actually such a big deal. They're finally acknowledging that medicine plays by different rules.
So let's dive into what HealthBench actually is.
Absolutely. At its core, HealthBench is a massive data set that OpenAI has developed specifically for healthcare evaluation. We're talking about 5,000 synthetic health conversations that mirror real world scenarios.
And these aren't just random conversations, right? They've been carefully crafted to feel authentic.
Exactly. These conversations are paired with more than 48,000 medical criteria that were written by actual doctors from 60 different countries. That's a level of global medical expertise we haven't seen in AI benchmarks before.
Most of the older evaluation methods were basically what? Multiple choice questions, like AI taking the MCAT?
That's right. Previous benchmarks were essentially testing if AI models could pass medical board exams. But that's not how medicine works in real life, is it? Patients don't walk in with multiple choice questions about their symptoms.
God, could you imagine? Doctor, I have either A, a migraine, B, seasonal allergies, C, a brain tumor, or D, all of the above. That would make diagnostics so much easier.
Ha ha ha, if only. But HealthBench is trying to move beyond that exam room mentality. These synthetic conversations include everything from emergency situations to routine checkups, preventive care discussions, and even mental health consultations.
What strikes me as particularly valuable is how they've designed these conversations to test different aspects of medical AI. It's not just about getting the diagnosis right, it's about communication style, cultural sensitivity, knowing when to escalate.
And importantly, knowing when to say, I don't know, or you should talk to a real doctor about this. That humility has been a major blind spot for most AI systems.
So instead of just testing if an AI knows what pneumonia is, HealthBench is asking, can you recognize pneumonia symptoms in a conversation? Can you communicate clearly with the patient? Can you give appropriate advice without overstepping?
And can you do all that in multiple languages across different cultural contexts with patients who might be confused, scared, or not articulating their symptoms clearly? It's testing for the messiness of real medicine.
Which, let's be honest, is what's been missing from most AI evaluations up until now. What really stands out to me about HealthBench is how it fundamentally changes the way we evaluate AI in healthcare. We're moving away from the textbook approach.
That's exactly right. Instead of just asking AI to regurgitate medical facts through multiple choice questions, HealthBench puts these models through realistic scenarios, the kind doctors and patients actually face every day.
It's like the difference between taking a written driving test and actually driving on the road, right? You can ace the written test about what to do in a rainstorm, but that doesn't mean you can actually handle a car when visibility drops to zero.
And what I find fascinating is how HealthBench specifically tests these AI models in emergency situations. Like, can the AI recognize when someone's describing symptoms of a stroke and respond appropriately?
Or how about dealing with ambiguity? Because patients rarely walk in and say, I'm experiencing symptom X, which is clearly indicative of condition Y.
Real patients say things like, I've been feeling kind of off lately, or there's this weird pain that comes and goes. HealthBench tests whether AI can navigate those murky waters.
And it's not just about understanding symptoms, right? It's also testing communication skills. Can the AI explain complex medical information clearly? Can it adjust its language for different types of users?
Absolutely. And speaking of language, this benchmark also evaluates AI performance across multiple languages, which is huge for global healthcare access.
That's something we don't talk about enough. Most medical AI has been heavily skewed toward English speakers, which creates this massive equity gap in healthcare.
Right. HealthBench includes conversations in various languages and cultural contexts. It's testing whether these models can be useful for someone speaking Spanish in Mexico or French in Senegal, not just English in American hospitals.
And it's testing all of this in context. Like, can the AI maintain appropriate bedside manner while delivering difficult news? Can it respond compassionately while still being factually accurate?
That's the real challenge, isn't it? Being technically correct isn't enough in healthcare. How you communicate can be just as important as what you communicate.
So, John, once these AI models are put through these realistic scenarios, how does HealthBench actually evaluate their performance? I imagine it's not as simple as right or wrong answers.
HealthBench grades the models across four key dimensions: instruction following, factual accuracy, communication quality, and medical appropriateness.
So, it's not just about getting the medical facts right, but also how they're delivered.
Exactly. For instruction following, for example, they're checking to see if the AI actually addresses what was asked. You'd be surprised how often AI models go off on tangents or miss the point entirely. For factual accuracy, they're obviously checking to confirm the medical information is correct, which is absolutely critical when health decisions might be based on these responses.
And I'm guessing communication quality is about clarity. Like, is the AI explaining things in a way that's understandable?
Right? And whether it's adjusting its language appropriately for the audience. The way you'd explain a condition to a fellow physician is very different from how you'd explain it to a patient with no medical background.
And then medical appropriateness, that seems like the trickiest one to evaluate.
This is about whether the AI's response is clinically sound. Is it giving medically appropriate advice? Is it recognizing when to escalate? Is it correctly prioritizing patient safety? These are nuanced judgments.
Who's actually doing the grading here? Is it all doctors?
The rubrics were created by physicians from 60 different countries, which is impressive. But what's interesting is that they're using both human evaluators and other AI systems to score the responses.
So AI is grading other AI? That seems a bit circular, doesn't it?
It does raise some questions. OpenAI acknowledges this limitation, but the scale of evaluation, we're talking 48,000 medical criteria, makes some automation necessary.
I'm also curious about these intentionally difficult conversations they've included. What's that about?
Yes, they've deliberately included about 1,000 scenarios where they know most current AI systems fail miserably. It's like setting traps to expose weaknesses. These are precisely the edge cases that could be dangerous in real world applications. Things like rare conditions, unusual presentations, or culturally specific health beliefs that might confuse an AI.
It's like stress testing a bridge before you let traffic on it. You want to know exactly where the breaking points are.
Exactly. And the whole point is to drive improvement. By exposing these blind spots now, in a controlled environment, they're pushing the entire field to get better before these systems are widely deployed in healthcare.
So, one thing that jumped out at me from this Health Bench announcement is that OpenAI didn't just test other companies' AI models, they tested their own new model too, right?
That's right. They put their new model called O3 through the same rigorous testing as models from Google, Meta, Anthropic, XAI, and others. And, surprise, surprise, their own model came out on top.
Well, that's convenient, isn't it? I mean, they built the benchmark and then their model aced it. Doesn't that seem a little like grading your own homework?
It definitely raises some eyebrows. When you create both the test and the thing being tested, there's an inherent conflict of interest. Even if they're being completely objective, it's hard to eliminate unconscious bias in how you design evaluation criteria.
So, how much did their model outperform the others? Was it like slightly better or dramatically better?
According to their published results, O3 significantly outperformed other models across all the evaluation categories we talked about earlier. They're claiming particularly strong performance in medical accuracy and appropriateness of recommendations.
You know what this reminds me of? It's like when pharmaceutical companies fund their own drug studies. The results tend to be more favorable than when independent researchers run the trials.
In medicine, we've learned to be cautious about company sponsored research for exactly that reason. It's why peer review and independent validation are cornerstones of medical science.
But I also want to be fair here. OpenAI did make HealthBench open source, right? So other companies and researchers can use it?
They did. By making HealthBench open source, they're allowing others to examine their methodology, run their own evaluations, and potentially point out flaws or biases in the benchmark itself. That level of transparency is important.
So basically, trust but verify.
Exactly. And to OpenAI's credit, they've been pretty transparent about their approach. But the healthcare industry will need to see independent validation before fully trusting these results.
I'm also wondering, is this partly a strategic move against Google? They've been making big waves with their MedPalm model, right?
Oh, 100%. This is absolutely OpenAI positioning itself as a serious contender in healthcare AI. Google has been getting a lot of attention with MedPalm, and Microsoft has been investing heavily in healthcare applications for its AI. This is OpenAI saying, hey, we're not just chatbots, we're serious about medicine too.
It's fascinating how competitive this space is becoming. I mean, billions of dollars are at stake here.
And potentially millions of lives. That's what makes this both exciting and concerning. The competition could drive rapid improvements, but it might also push companies to overpromise or deploy systems before they're truly ready for healthcare settings.
AI is already making its way into hospitals and clinics, whether it's ready or not.
That's absolutely right. Doctors and nurses are already experimenting with ChatGPT and similar tools for all sorts of tasks. They're using them for charting, drafting notes, triaging patients, even helping with patient communication.
It's happening under the radar in a lot of places, isn't it? Not necessarily as official hospital policy, but more like individual healthcare workers finding ways to make their jobs easier.
Exactly. And I can see why these tools are so seductive. They're fast, they're available 24/7, they never get tired, and they can produce fluent, professional sounding text in seconds.
I mean, if I were a doctor working 80-hour weeks and drowning in paperwork, I'd probably be tempted too.
Especially with the documentation burden in healthcare these days. Some studies show doctors spending 2 hours on paperwork for every hour they spend with patients. So anything that helps with that feels like a lifeline.
But, and this is a big but, these tools weren't really built for medicine, were they? They have some pretty serious flaws when it comes to healthcare.
That's right. These models are prone to hallucinations, making up facts that sound plausible but aren't true. They can be overconfident when they're wrong, and they might miss subtle but critical details that could affect patient care.
It's one thing if AI makes a mistake in drafting an email, but it's a whole different level of risk when someone's health is on the line.
In medicine, mistakes can have devastating consequences. Even small errors can cascade into serious problems. If an AI misunderstands a symptom or suggests an inappropriate treatment, that could directly harm patients.
And I imagine there are liability issues too, like who's responsible if an AI generated treatment plan causes harm? The doctor who used it, the hospital, the AI company.
That's still a gray area. The legal and regulatory frameworks haven't caught up with the technology yet. Most hospitals don't even have formal policies about using these tools.
It seems like we're in an awkward in between stage. The technology is accessible enough that people are using it, but not refined enough to be truly safe for healthcare.
That's exactly why something like Health Bench could be valuable, despite its limitations. We need rigorous, clinically informed evaluation of these systems before they're widely deployed in healthcare settings.
So, beyond creating benchmarks like HealthBench, OpenAI is making some strategic moves in healthcare, aren't they?
They definitely are. OpenAI isn't just testing the waters, they're diving into healthcare through some significant partnerships with major players in the industry.
They've teamed up with Sanofi, right? That's a pretty big deal.
Huge deal. Sanofi is one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies. OpenAI is working with them and Formation Bio to build AI tools that could dramatically speed up clinical trials. If successful, that could mean getting medications to patients much faster.
And they're also working with Color Health, which is interesting because they focus on genetic testing and preventative healthcare, don't they?
Exactly. With Color Health, they're developing what they're calling an AI powered cancer co pilot that designs personalized care plans. This is moving beyond just answering medical questions.
That sounds like a significant step forward. What about their work with iodine software?
That's where things get really interesting for hospitals. They're integrating GPT-4 directly into hospital operations through iodine. This could affect everything from medical coding to resource allocation, essentially the back end of healthcare delivery.
So they're targeting both the clinical side and the operational side. Smart move.
And don't forget their academic partnership with UT Health Houston. That's bringing AI into both medical education and clinical settings simultaneously, potentially influencing how the next generation of doctors is trained.
When you look at all these partnerships together, it paints a pretty clear picture, doesn't it? OpenAI isn't just creating tools for healthcare, they're positioning themselves at the very center of the health AI ecosystem.
Yes, it's not just about competing with Google's MedPalm or other medical AI systems. They're going after healthcare's core infrastructure, trying to embed themselves in how care is planned, delivered, and managed.
It's a comprehensive strategy. Get the benchmark to set the standards, then build partnerships that put your technology at every level of the healthcare system.
And doing it with established, trusted names in healthcare helps address some of the credibility issues they might otherwise face. It's much harder to dismiss their efforts when they've got major medical institutions and pharmaceutical companies on board.
Do you think this is the playbook we'll see from other AI companies too?
I think it has to be. Healthcare isn't like other industries. You can't just disrupt first and ask questions later. The regulatory barriers and need for specialized knowledge are too high. Strategic partnerships are probably the only viable path forward.
But with all these ambitious moves, HealthBench isn't without its critics, is it?
No, one of the biggest concerns that experts have raised is fundamental, that AI systems are essentially evaluating other AI systems.
Like I said, it's like having students grade their own homework.
The worry is that if these models share certain blind spots or biases, those shared flaws might go completely undetected in the evaluation process. If all AI systems misunderstand a particular condition in the same way, having one AI evaluate another won't catch that problem.
So, what's OpenAI saying about these criticisms?
To their credit, they're acknowledging this is just a first draft. They've been pretty transparent that HealthBench is meant to spur progress, not declare victory.
What kind of improvements are they planning?
They're looking to expand human reviews, for one. Having actual doctors evaluate the AI responses would address that concern about AI grading AI. But they're also planning more comprehensive subgroup testing.
For things like gender and age differences?
Yes, and geographic variations too. They want to ensure that these systems work equally well for everyone, regardless of gender, age, or where they live. Medical knowledge and practice can vary significantly across different regions.
That's crucial because healthcare disparities already exist. The last thing we need is AI that amplifies those inequalities.
Absolutely. And that's the real tension here, isn't it? AI in medicine has this incredible promise: equity, speed, accessibility at scale. But if it's rushed out without proper safeguards, we risk creating systems with bias, opacity, and potential for harm.
So, HealthBench is a step in the right direction, but we're still at the beginning of this journey.
I think that's the fairest way to look at it. On one hand, we have this incredible promise of what AI could bring to healthcare: equity, speed, and the ability to scale medical expertise to places and people who desperately need it.
And on the other hand, we've got these very real risks of bias, opacity, and potential overreach if we rush the technology.
Exactly. And that's what makes HealthBench so interesting. It's not just another benchmark, it's OpenAI acknowledging that in healthcare, the stakes are different.
I think about rural communities or developing nations where there might be one doctor for thousands of people. AI could be transformative there, right?
It could be yes. Imagine AI systems that help with initial screening or provide quality health information in languages and contexts where it's currently scarce. The potential is enormous.
But then I also think about the dangers. AI that might work perfectly for certain demographics but completely misses important symptoms in others.
Or systems that sound so confident and authoritative that clinicians or patients over rely on them, even when they're wrong.
So, where does HealthBench fit into this tension?
I see it as the beginning of a new chapter, honestly. Instead of just racing to build the most capable medical AI, we're starting to seriously invest in evaluating these systems against real world healthcare scenarios.
It's like we're moving from the can we build it phase to the should we build it and how do we build it responsibly phase.
Right. And if HealthBench helps shift the industry toward measuring what actually matters in healthcare: safety, clarity, accessibility, effectiveness for all patients, that could be its biggest contribution.
So, as we wrap up our discussion on OpenAI's HealthBench initiative, what do you think are the key takeaways, John?
I think first and foremost, HealthBench represents a significant shift in how we evaluate AI in healthcare. This isn't just another technical benchmark, it's 5,000 realistic healthcare conversations paired with evaluation criteria from doctors across 60 countries.
Right, and it's testing AI in ways that actually matter for healthcare, not just knowledge, but communication, safety, and contextual understanding.
What strikes me most is that OpenAI seems to recognize that healthcare isn't just another industry to disrupt. They're acknowledging that when it comes to people's health, we need specialized, rigorous evaluation methods.
I'm cautiously optimistic about that. Though I do think it's worth noting that they're still grading their own homework to some extent, with their Model O3 conveniently coming out on top.
And that's exactly why we should keep a critical eye on developments like this. The partnerships they're forming with Sanofi, Color Health, and others show they're serious about healthcare as a strategic focus.
I think the key thing to watch is how these benchmarks evolve. Will future versions include more human review? Will they address biases across different patient populations?
And let's also watch how regulatory bodies respond. Medicine is highly regulated for good reason, and AI will need to fit into that framework, not the other way around.
Bottom line, HealthBench isn't the solution to AI's medical blind spots, but it might be an important step toward addressing them. That wraps up this week's edition of the MedCloud Insider podcast.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you have thoughts on any of the healthcare technologies we discussed, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach us through our website, medcloudinsider.com.
We'll catch you next time for the cutting edge of healthcare technology.
Bye, everyone.